I never meant for anyone to know it was me. That was the whole point of dropping $10,000 cash into my parents' old, squeaky metal mailbox at exactly 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday night. Not that the time matters, but the moment felt cinematic, the quiet sort of dramatic that sticks with you. I had spent months saving, working to part-time jobs while studying, meticulously stashing away everything I could because I wanted just once to give my parents something without them worrying about how I earned it, or turning it down out of pride. They'd done so much for me, paid for my braces when they couldn't afford it, stayed up late studying with me, covered bills when my student loans dried up. They were the kind of parents who gave even when they had nothing to spare. So this wad of carefully counted bills was supposed to be my thank you, quiet, kind, anonymous. But one wrench twisted the whole plan. I told my sister, I know. You'd think after 22 years of living with Maya I would have learned she's a black hole for secrets. Not out of malice, well, not always, but out of something worse. The reflexive need to make everything about herself. She had always been the golden child, the charismatic one, the one whose jokes landed and whose tears triggered instant sympathy. Me. I was the one who blended into wallpaper. Still, I didn't want her to panic when she saw a stranger lingering near our parents' porch on the home cameras. She lived right next door. She checked the footage like it was her personal TV show. So I called her after I got back in my car. Hey, I whispered, heart thudding as if I'd robbed a bank instead of gifted money. If you see someone on the camera near the mailbox tonight, that was me. What? She half laughed. Why were you creeping around? I dropped something off for Mom and Dad. Anonymous. Don't say anything. What did you drop off? A gift. I hesitated. Money. How much? She asked, suspicion blooming through the speaker. Doesn't matter, I said. She sucked in a breath like she was swallowing a secret. Okay. I won't say anything, I promise. And like an idiot, I believed her. The next morning, my mom called me, voice shaking. Sweetheart, you won't believe this. Someone left us. It must be a miracle. I smiled into my pillow, warm, relieved, wanting so badly to say, I'm glad you're happy, but I kept up the act. Really, what happened? She told me how they'd opened the mailbox and found the envelope, how Dad had sat down on the porch step like someone had punched him, not in fear but in gratitude, how they'd wondered aloud who could have done such a thing. I let her bask. It was the best part, hearing her be happy. But then she said it. Maya came over this morning. She told us it was from her. My breath left my lungs. She said what? She said she didn't want attention for it. She just wanted us to know. She said she'd been saving up and wanted to help us. There was no universe, none, where Maya had ever saved 10 grand without documenting the journey like a personal pilgrimage on social media. I managed, throat tight. Wow. Something inside me cracked. I hung up quickly, claiming class, and sat on the edge of my bed, fingers numb. A hot, humiliated fury built in the center of my chest. Not because she'd taken the credit though, that stung like hell, but because she'd taken the moment away from me and turned it into yet another chapter of the Gospel of Maya. My phone buzzed. A text from her. They loved it. You're welcome for keeping your secret. I stared at the message, disbelief shifting into something cold. She didn't keep the secret. She didn't even try. She stole it. Stole their gratitude. Stole the story. Stole the thing I had spent months building in private. And that right there was the moment something in me hardened. I didn't want revenge at first. Not the type people write stories about. But then I saw her Instagram story, an hour later. A photo of our parents hugging her. Caption, being able to give back to the people who raised me. #blessed, accompanied by a stack of emojis that made me physically sick. That was when I knew, if she wanted to make this a story, I could write one to Dot, and mine would have a far better ending. I didn't confront her right away. Maya was the kind of person who sharpened her teeth on confrontation. She fit on it, twisted it, made herself the victim, even when she was the one bleeding everyone else dry. If I stormed in demanding answers, she'd cry first, accuse later, and walk away looking like the injured party while I looked like a jealous lunatic. No, if she wanted to lie, she'd do it on a stage of her own making, and I wanted the world to watch her trip over her own script. But that didn't mean I wasn't furious. The weekend after the miracle money appeared, Mom invited us over for dinner. I knew it was coming. She wanted to thank Maya properly, with food, with love, with praise, because our parents saw the best in us even when we didn't deserve it. The invite text read, "Come around 6. We want to celebrate Maya tonight." Celebrate, that word soured on my tongue. I walked to my parents. house rehearsing every possible response for every possible thing Maya could say. I almost turned around twice. But then I remembered the Instagram post, the way she'd angled her face to look humble, touching the corner of her eye like she was holding in noble tears. I wasn't going to let her keep the story. When I stepped inside, everything smelled like roasted garlic and rosemary. My mom bustled around the kitchen wearing the apron I bought her last Christmas. World's best mom, a gift I'd actually been credited for. The TV hummed lightly in the background. The dining table was set with the good plates, the ones she only pulled out for holidays or when she wanted to make someone feel special. Dad hugged me first. A long, warm squeeze. "You doing okay?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Then I saw her. Maya stood at the counter with a glass of wine, glowing like the heroine of her own movie. She looked triumphant, not smug, not gloating, but self-satisfied in that infuriating way she had, like the universe was finally aligning itself to properly reward her. "Hey, sis," she said sweetly, though her eyes flickered with something else, something nervous. Guilt, maybe, or the thrill of getting away with it. "Hi," I replied evenly. Dinner was torture. Every time our parents said thank you, Maya did that little head tilt she used when she wanted to look modest. The worst part was that our parents meant it. They weren't praising her for show. They were genuinely proud. They thought she had saved up $10,000 while juggling 2 kids, a mortgage, and a part-time job. Even I had to admit it was impressive on paper. "How did you do it?" my dad asked her, eyes shining. "Oh, she said breezily, swirling her wine, little by little, saving over time. It wasn't easy, but it felt right." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing because that was the opposite of the truth. Maya didn't save, she burned money, like it became radioactive if she held on to it too long. I kept my voice steady when I finally spoke. "When did you decide to give it to them?" Her eyes flicked to mine sharp, brief. "A while ago," she lied. "It was something I'd been planning." My parents beamed at her. She shot me a triumphant look, subtle and poisonous, and that was when I realized something important. This wasn't just about credit. This wasn't even about pride. This was about Maya, proving if only to herself, that she could rewrite any narrative she wanted if she delivered it, with enough confidence. But stories don't belong solely to the people who claim them. They belong to the truth. After dessert, my mom's peach cobblery lingered in the living room. The evening sun cast warm gold through the curtains. Dad rested his hand on Maya's shoulder and said, with total sincerity, "You've grown into such a generous woman. We're so proud of you." I watched her soak in those words like sunshine. And something clicked in my mind. If she wanted the spotlight so badly, fine, I'd leave it right on her, until it burned. Revenge wasn't just forming anymore, it was crystallizing, sharpening, taking shape like a blade cooling in water, and I knew exactly where to begin. The first step in revenge is observation. You don't rush in with fire and shouts, you map the territory. Note every weakness, every habit, every crack in the armor. Maya, it turns out, had more cracks than she realized. She loved attention, loved approval, loved being admired. Every compliment was fuel. Every glance of jealousy from others was proof she was winning. And like all people addicted to being seen, she left herself exposed in predictable ways. I spent the next week watching, listening, and gathering details. Not like a stalker, I was careful, but like a strategist, a chess player studying the opponent before making a decisive move. I made notes. She bragged constantly about her savings discipline to anyone who would listen. She never double-checked facts when a story made her look good. She had a weak spot for charitable work she could frame as glamorous. She liked to show off her Instagram aesthetic, especially if she could capture her good deeds in one perfect shot. It was almost too easy. I started small, a few subtle reminders here and there, casual mentions of money and generosity when she was around. Nothing aggressive, just seeds planted to grow doubt. Funny how anonymous gifts always get misattributed. I'd say, voice, light, like a passing thought. She'd stiffen, laugh nervously, brush it off, but the tiny fissures were there. Then came the email. I didn't send it. I didn't have to. I found an old chain she'd forgotten, about a fundraiser she had done last year. I forwarded it to our parents, asking casually, "Hey, do you remember this? Thought you'd like to see what she did back then." They replied immediately, nostalgic and proud. Oh yes, Maya did help a lot. She's always been generous. She didn't notice I had added a small comment at the bottom of the email. Funny how some gifts seem bigger than others. depending on who gives them. The next time we were together, I watched her squirm, tiny cracks showing in the mask she always wore. She asked, nervously, "What do you mean by that?" "Oh, nothing," I said, smiling like sugar on the tongue, "just thinking about how people give." She laughed, but the tension was there, prickling. I could see it. I could feel it. The first crack had appeared by the end of the week. I had a plan forming in sharper focus. I wouldn't expose her outright. Not yet. I wouldn't scream the truth at our parents and risk looking bitter. No, I would turn the tables with precision. Maya loved appearances, loved being praised for her supposed virtue. What she didn't anticipate was someone using her own tactics against her. The stage would be her world, her friends, her social media, her pride, and the play I would direct would show her for exactly who she was: ambitious, cunning, and a little too eager to take credit for what wasn't hers. Step 1. Make her want to brag even more. Step 2. Make that brag collapse in a way only I could orchestrate. Step 3. Watch. It was a delicate dance. Too fast, and she'd see the hand. Too slow, and she might slip away with her story intact. Timing, I realized, was everything, and patience gold. Calculated patience was a weapon. That weekend, I visited my parents again, under the guise of casual visits. I helped with chores, baked cookies, complimented their home. Meanwhile, I left subtle clues that reminded them, ever so lightly, that sometimes miracles came from the quietest places, sometimes unnoticed, sometimes mysterious. I could see the seed of doubt growing in their minds, though not consciously. They hadn't accused Maya yet. They were too generous, but their occasional glances, tiny questions, little pauses when Maya bragged, showed me the beginning of awareness. And as I drove home that evening, I realized something terrifyingly beautiful. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It wasn't about anger. Not really. It was about control. About rewriting the narrative. She had stolen and steering it back toward the truth without her ever realizing the hand guiding the story. Maya thought she had won. She thought she had the spotlight. She didn't see the strings being pulled behind the curtain, and she never would, not until the perfect moment. The perfect moment was coming, and when it arrived, everything she had built, her reputation, her image, her carefully curated story would collapse like a house of cards. I smiled in the dark as I parked my car that night. Revenge, I realized, was patient, and patience, when wielded properly, was lethal. I knew the perfect trap would have to be subtle. Maya's ego was a dangerous thing, too fragile to attack head-on, yet too bold to resist a stage built for her to perform on. She lived for applause, for validation, for being the hero. If I set it up correctly, she would rush right into it without hesitation. It started with social media. Maya posted constantly, carefully curating her life to look like an unbroken highlight reel of success, generosity, and charm. I didn't need to hack accounts or lie outright. Her vanity did the work for me. I just needed to guide it. The first step was planting the idea that she had an opportunity to further prove herself. I casually mentioned to her, I heard about a new charitable project, cash donations, secret gifts to families. It's anonymous, but huge. You'd totally love it. She lit up immediately. Anonymous, like a big secret project. Yeah, I said, my voice casual. People get recognized, but only if they step forward themselves. The hook was set. I watched as she researched the project obsessively, clicking links, jotting down notes, even bragging a little to friends without realizing she was being baited. Meanwhile, I prepared the collateral, copies of emails, receipts, screenshots of conversations between me and the fundraiser organizers, all neatly labeled, all ready to produce at the exact right moment. I wasn't exposing her yet. I was laying the groundwork, making sure the truth would land like a hammer when the trap sprung. It didn't take long for her to fall in line. Within days, she began planning a grand reveal, imagining herself basking in praise, glowing like some sort of miracle worker. The irony, of course, was that the truth had nothing to do with her. Everything she was building, she thought, came from her own efforts. But it was a carefully choreographed illusion I had guided. Then came the dinner. My parents were away on a weekend trip, and Maya invited herself over to coordinate the project with me. I let her in, smiling, acting like the oblivious sister. I can't wait for this, she said, practically vibrating with excitement. This is going to be huge. People are going to see me, finally. I mean, they'll know I'm generous. The word tasted like acid in my mouth, but I nodded. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be amazing at it. She pulled out her laptop, talking nonstop about strategy, social media posts, donations, and the big reveal. I listened, carefully taking mental notes of every boast, every assumption, every self-important detail. And then, subtly, I began to weave my own thread into the conversation. "I'm glad you're taking charge," I said lightly. "It's funny, though, sometimes anonymous gifts get misattributed. It's easy for people to assume the wrong person is responsible if someone steps forward too quickly." Her hands froze mid-gesture. "What do you mean?" I shrugged, smiling innocently. "Nothing, just a thought. Wouldn't want anyone to get confused." Her eyes flickered. She laughed nervously, brushing it off, but I knew the seed was planted. Doubt, tiny, almost imperceptible, but it would grow. Over the next week, I subtly leaked little mistakes to her. A misplaced receipt here, a forgotten email there, all carefully orchestrated to make her over. She doubled down, overcompensated, and, crucially, she kept broadcasting her self-proclaimed generosity. The trap was taking shape. The best part, she didn't realize it. She thought she was orchestrating her own rise, but she was walking directly into the snare I had laid. By the time my parents returned, she was ready to stage the grand performance. I waited, silent, observing every gesture, every inflection, every carefully polished smile, and in that waiting, I realized something powerful. Revenge isn't about rage or anger. It's about timing. It's about precision. It's about letting someone fall not because you push them, but because you know exactly how they will fall themselves. Maya had no idea the stage was mine to control, and when the curtain rose, I would watch her trip over her own vanity, over her own lies, over the story she had stolen from me. She thought she was winning. She didn't even know she was already caught, and that was the sweetest part of all. The night had finally arrived. Everything was aligned perfectly. The trap, the audience, the unsuspecting victim. Maya had been tirelessly preparing her grand reveal for the charity project, talking to friends, posting cryptic teasers on social media, and letting everyone know how much she was sacrificing to help others. I stayed in the background, a shadow, letting her bask in her self-made spotlight, while I held the final piece, the one she could never manipulate. That it started casually, with an innocent comment during dinner. I leaned back, holding a glass of water, and said, "You know, it's funny how people always rush to take credit. Sometimes the real work is done quietly, and the world just assumes the wrong person is responsible." Her smile faltered, just slightly. She laughed it off, masking the sudden unease. I let it sit, let the words sink. Timing, as I had learned, was everything. A few minutes later, I casually pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll. "Oh, I was just looking at the emails from the fundraiser," I said, voice light, almost casual. "Funny, some of them seemed misdirected. People thought Maya had donated or coordinated, but the records show something different." Her hand twitched mid-gesture, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice a touch higher than usual. I smiled, innocently, just noticing that sometimes appearances are deceptive. "You know how easy it is to assume the wrong person did the right thing." Maya stiffened, trying to recover. "Well, maybe I got some credit for helping organize," but I cut her off gently. "Organize, perhaps, but you didn't actually contribute financially. That part wasn't yours." The room went silent. The air thickened. Even my parents, who had always believed the best of everyone, exchanged glances, sensing tension but not knowing the details. She tried to keep her composure, but her voice shook. I thought it was mine to share. I mean, you didn't what?" I said softly, leaning in. "Take credit for someone else's work." The words hit her like a hammer. Her carefully constructed image, the one she had spent months polishing, was beginning to crumble. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to argue, tried to explain, but there were no defenses left. All the claims she had made, all the posts, all the stories she had told, were now easily traced back to me, the one who had planned, saved, and executed the gift. I let it play out slowly, let the silence hang in the room, let the truth settle like dust on a neglected shelf. Finally, my mom spoke, voice gentle but firm. "Honey, is this true? Did you?" I nodded, holding her gaze. "Yes. I saved, I planned, and I gave them this gift." Maya saw me and decided to claim it for herself. The color drained from Maya's face. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the panic rising behind her eyes, the realization that everything she had built, this past month was a lie. Her pride, her attention, her applause, it was all based on someone else's work. Then came the social media fallout. I let her step into it. I didn't post anything myself. I simply shared receipts and proof, calmly and neutrally. When people began asking questions, friends, followers, even distant relatives, all of them, slowly pieced it together. Maya's online persona, her carefully curated image of generosity and selflessness, began to fracture under the weight of evidence. Her friends tried to defend her at first, but the facts were undeniable. Screenshots, emails, and her own boasts became the chains that trapped her. Her confidence cracked, turning to flustered explanations, which only made her look worse. By the end of the night, Maya had retreated to her room, phone in hand, staring at the messages, comments, and notifications piling up. The applause she had sought so desperately was gone. She had built her pedestal only to fall off it spectacularly. Meanwhile, I watched quietly from the living room, a sense of satisfaction settling in my chest, not vengeance born of anger, but of precision. The story had been reclaimed, the credit restored, and Maya had learned finally that truth cannot be borrowed without consequence. I didn't gloat, I didn't yell, I simply let the aftermath unfold. And in that silence, in that calm, I realized the most satisfying part of all: revenge, when executed perfectly, is quiet, meticulous, and utterly undeniable. Maya had stolen the spotlight, but the stage was mine again. The morning after the collapse of Maya's little empire was eerily quiet. There were no texts from her, no calls, no passive-aggressive posts about fake people or haters, just silence, a heavy, strained silence that filled the house like smoke. I walked downstairs to find my mom at the table with her coffee, staring at her phone with a worried crease between her eyebrows. The steam rising from the mug swirled around her like a fading fog. She looked up at me, eyes soft but troubled. "Your sister, she's having a hard time," she said quietly. I nodded. "I know." Mom hesitated. "You didn't have to embarrass her." I sat down across from her and took a breath. "I didn't embarrass her, Mom. She did that to herself. I just corrected the narrative." Mom didn't argue. She never did when she knew I was right. Instead, she sighed, the weight of 1,000 motherly instincts pulling at her expression. "She shouldn't have claimed credit for your gift." There, it was truth, finally spoken plainly. I didn't need a parade. I didn't need applause. I just needed the truth to stand unbent. And now, it did. Dad came in a moment later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "We're proud of you," he said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Not just for the money, though that was incredibly generous, but for staying calm, for telling the truth without tearing anyone down. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice not to break. Later that afternoon, Maya emerged from her room. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale, her usual confidence stripped away. She looked smaller somehow, like the version of herself she tried so hard to hide. Uncertain, insecure, scared. She stood in the doorway and cleared her throat. "Can we talk?" she asked me. I set my phone aside and nodded. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, picking at her sleeves. "I messed up," she whispered. "It wasn't rehearsed or dramatic. It was real raw. Even, I wasn't sure I'd ever heard her sound like that before. I shouldn't have taken credit for what you did," she continued. "I thought, I don't know, I thought if I did something big, people would see me. They'd appreciate me. And when I saw what you'd done, $10,000, I wanted that feeling. I wanted Mom and Dad to look at me like that." I studied her face. For once, there was no smugness, no mask, no glittering layer of self-importance, just regret and insecurity. "You lied," I said calmly. "Not just to them, to everyone. You built a whole story around something that wasn't yours." "I know," she muttered, wiping her eyes. "And I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't think you'd ever want the recognition, so I thought it wouldn't hurt anything. But then, the attention felt good, and I didn't want to let it go. That doesn't make it okay." "I know," she swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just needed to say, I'm sorry." I sat with that for a long moment. I didn't hate her. I never had. Even with everything she'd done, she was still my sister, flawed, insecure, desperate for validation, but still human, and hurting. "I appreciate the apology," I finally said, "but trust isn't automatic. You broke it, and it's going to take time to rebuild." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I get that." We sat in silence for a bit. Not comfortable silence, but not hostile either. Just honest. After a few minutes, she stood up, I'm going to make things right with mom and dad. And online, I'll tell the truth, the real truth. She hesitated. Not because I got caught, but because you deserved better. She left the room quietly, her steps slow, thoughtful. Thought by evening, she had posted a long, heartfelt message online, explaining everything: how she let pressure get to her, how she made a mistake, how the real generosity came from me. People responded with surprise, disappointment, support. It wasn't a public execution. It was a reckoning, one she needed. Mom cried when Maya confessed to them. Dad hugged both of us, and the air in the house slowly cleared. Later that night, I sat outside under the porch light, listening to the soft hum of the neighborhood. The sky above was dark and scattered with stars. I felt lighter, not triumphant, not vengeful, just settled. My revenge wasn't fire or fury or chaos. It was truth, delivered precisely, patiently, and with purpose. And in the end, it didn't destroy my yacht, revealed her. She would heal. We both would. And maybe, just maybe, she would think twice before rewriting someone else's story again. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully and let the night swallow my worries. This chapter was over.